All right, hey everyone, this is Ben with the Tiger's Den. I am streaming from Chris's place today, where we work on our board games every Monday. And as you've probably seen by now, there has been a new ban and restricted announcement that just went up a few minutes ago for Magic the Gathering. So we're going to talk about that, just sort of what this means for the format, the rationale behind it, which I think is pretty good, and also the new format announcement, the Pioneer format. So we're going to start with the ban list announcements. So let's actually do Pauper first. I don't really follow Pauper, but from what I've heard, Arcum's Astrolabe has been a huge thing there. It is now banned. I guess that's good for Pauper. Cool. Moving along. I think that what most of us are here for is the standard ban. Field of the Dead is banned, full stop. That is it. So let's take a look at their rationale here. So I'm not going to read everything here. You can check it out on Wizards or magic.wizards.com. But what they're saying here is that Field of the Dead has been a very good deck for quite a while, according to their internal data. I don't think that's a huge surprise. The thing that I do find surprising is that if this is what they think, that they didn't do something at the previous ban list announcement and then announced kind of like an emergency, oh, actually, we're going to do our next banning earlier than usual, earlier than originally announced, if they thought that was the case then. But while they didn't give us any numbers here other than what we already knew, which was 42% of Mythic Championship 5 was Field of the Dead, we can, take their word for it that it has been that it's been overperforming, and I think that that's fine. And I think that actually the best thing about this announcement is the part down here, that it was 42% of the field at Mythic Championship 5, both high rate of play and win rate on Magic the Gathering Online. But then, on top of that, I want to be clear that the outcome of Mythic Championship 5 did not affect this B&R decision. In order to collect and analyze a large sample of data, discuss a decision, and communicate that decision to our partners in rules, digital, and organized play, B&R changes require a certain amount of lead time. Therefore, while the metagame leading up to and including Mythic Championship 5 was a factor in our decision-making, this change is not a direct reaction to the results of that event. In general, a single tournament is only ever a part of a bigger picture when we consider B&R changes. So I think that that is great. I'm going to start with that. Good job, WotC. Good job not only taking a really measured step here, but also communicating that's very clearly. Because, a lot of people saw, oh man, this week 1 tournament is mostly Field of the Dead. We got to get rid of Field of the Dead. And so WotC actually saying, no, while that does feed into the overall picture, this is not a thing that we were taking into consideration. And not only for practical considerations of is that representative of the field generally, but also just guys, even if we wanted to, we couldn't do that because we need more lead time for our digital clients. So I'm going to say good job on you, WotC. I'm really glad that we got this big discussion here and that was a big part of said discussion. Other things in this article have to do with, it makes it hard to win with traditional control decks and how it kind of warps the aggro field and things like that. However, I'm going to say I am really not a fan of this change. I think that this is going to have a pretty negative effect on the format, and here's why. Field of the Dead, while polarizing, is something that can be gamed against pretty effectively. And from what we saw at both the metagame at large and at Mythic Championship 5 back this up, and again, that's too small of a tournament. It was only 68 players, so we can't draw any firm conclusions based on that. But from what we've been seeing outside of that, it looks like these Bant ramp strategies and basically the Oko decks are pretty much the decks at this point that are propping up and even kind of supplanting Field as the big bad of the format even before Field gets the axe, which this won't go into effect for a couple days yet. Today is October 21st, and this will go into effect between the 21st and so today for Magic Online, and then the 24th for Arena, 25th for Tabletop. So even before this goes into effect, we've already been seeing these Oko-based, Bant ramp specifically decks really sort of becoming the big bad and being hard to hedge against because they're so powerful and they have so many really powerful lines and they have game against virtually everything. On top of that, we have the turn 2 Okos, which are virtually lights out for many decks because you have lots of decks, their way of interacting with Planeswalkers is creatures. If you don't have things like Murderous Rider in your colors, the way that you can defeat a Planeswalker is by attacking into it. And when your opponent can make an endless army of 3/3 starting turn 2, or can make a food and then swap the food for any creature that you could deploy at that point, there's really no way to get back in against that. So I don't like doomsaying about ban list announcements, and especially in, this is still a relatively new format, the Throne of Eldraine standard, and we're just post-rotation and things like that. So I want to caveat all of this by saying that it's still pretty early, and we don't have, WotC has data, they're not sharing it with us, so we kind of have to go on the limited data that we have, and stuff like that, so it's hard to come to firm conclusions, but I don't see this panning out well, because the thing that was keeping down the Bant Ramp and food decks was their not great Golos matchups, and with maybe now Control can come up because Field is gone, and maybe Control can put the brakes on the Bant Ramp and the Oko and the food decks, but that's a pretty big gamble. So leaving what I think was actually the best deck in the format untouched, while getting rid of a worse deck that was the one thing that was checking the best deck, I don't see that working out very well. And sure, we saw Gruul aggro win Mythic Championship 5 yesterday. I don't think that who wins a tournament is a relevant data point. It shows that you can win with Gruul aggro when there's food decks out there, but who takes the number one spot in a tournament is such an insignificant sample size, especially in these tiny tournaments, that I don't think that we can take comfort in that fact. So yeah, this just let's see if they mentioned when the next one's November 18th, so we've got about a month before the next BNR announcement, and they did say down here, we're aware of a few other community concerns regarding standard environment, including that early acceleration into planeswalkers can be frustrating, and the color green is strong across a variety of standard archetypes. We'll continue to monitor the health of the environment, but feel it's important to allow the metagame to adjust to the absence of Field of the Dead before further evaluation. As a philosophy, we prefer that players' deck building and metagame choices drive the evolution of the environment whenever possible, rather than the BNR intervention. So they are throwing a bone out here, right? But I'm not optimistic about the next month. They're keeping an eye on it. Maybe something will get banned a month from now, but I do feel like there are pretty low-hanging fruits that could have been, because we've already seen how good these decks are. It's not like, oh, well, maybe food will be good, maybe Bant Ramp will be good now. No, these are already the premier decks in the format, while the number one deck by popularity at that tournament, at least, was preying on them. So, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Control will step up and will tamp down on this, and then aggro can be good against the Control decks. I don't know. Going up aggro against Control, of course, is a really scary prospect a lot of the time, especially when there's 4 mana, 3 mana Teferi into 4 mana Kaya's Wrath, things like that after a turn 2 Thought Erasure. But we'll have to see. I do think it's nice that we'll be able to see more decks hopefully opened up that are playable now, because Field is a completely dead deck. But I do feel like we would have probably had that same effect if Field would have been weakened without being utterly obliterated. Getting rid of things like Arboreal Grazer, 3 mana Teferi to just slow them down, make them weaker against the rest of the field, or, other targeted bans like Hydroid Krasis, which hits both Bant Ramp and Oko decks really hard, while also hurting the field deck to a significant degree while not completely obliterating it from the format. So, anyway, that is my thoughts on this. Like I said, not very optimistic about what the next month is going to look like, but at the very least, they did signal down here that they're thinking about it, that green is on their radar, and they didn't mention Oko, notice, which, they didn't mention any cards by name here, but the fact that they didn't say the word Oko in this announcement, as far as, let me just double check that before I say it. Yeah, there are no mentions of Oko on this article. So the fact that they didn't mention that means that all those people that are hoping Oko's going to get the axe because he's so good, I think they're kind of sending us an implicit message here, because everyone knows that, we all sort of know that that's the format defining card at the moment. So the fact that that word isn't in here, I think, is a little bit of a signal that that is not something they're interested in right now. I could be wrong about that. This is just an assumption that I'm making. So anyway, let's move on from that for a second, because we do have this thing called the Pioneer format, which was announced roughly at the same time. So this is going to be a new non-rotating format featuring Return to Ravnica Forward, and it's going to be on Tabletop and Magic Online. So one important thing here is that the fetch lands from Khans of Tarkir are banned in this format, which means that it'll be there will be fetch lands in it, Fabled Passage will be legal, but these like, the fetch lands. Like when someone says fetch land, what they're talking about. Those cards are banned in this format, so we're not going to be seeing them. Um, and of course, they're saying we'll talk more about our philosophy on Thursday and bannings and things like that. And this is not a finalized ban list, but it's going to be starting from Return to Ravnica through Throne of Eldraine and beyond. So this is pretty cool. It's not going to be on Arena as far as we can see. Like, it could come in the future potentially. And maybe this is actually kind of them priming the pump for a new non-rotating format coming to Arena, but like namely this one. That, it would be a lot easier if they wanted to do a non-rotating format here that's not historic, that then they have this established thing here that they can already judge the popularity of versus historic, where it just had to be dropped in and, kind of, completely untested, more or less, in terms of its popularity. So I will say that I'm a little bit peeved at the fact that we have yet another non-rotating format coming to the not super popular Magic the Gathering online platform, when Magic Arena is so much more popular and has so many more people playing it. And yet we have things like, well, you can play Brawl, but only on Wednesdays, and you can play Historic, but we're going to completely hide it to the point that most people don't even know that it exists, even though it's been live for a little while now, since the last update. And you can't play it in Ranked and things like that. And so really trying to control the number of people that are playing things other than Standard in Arena, while then rolling out more things in this, vastly less popular format, feels pretty disingenuous to me, because the one generous take on the lack of support for non-standard non-draft formats in Arena is, oh, well, the queue times would be too long. But that seems like when you take this comparatively small Magic Online MTGO populace and divide it up even further with another non-rotating format, that argument just completely falls flat, because there's so many more people playing and on Arena than on MTGO. And yeah, the conception that, if we had a couple of formats on Arena versus like 11 or 12 or something like that, I think, on Magic Online, don't quote me on that, but I think it's in that ballpark. That seems completely nuts to me, and that I'm actually kind of incensed at this if they don't, loosen some of their pretty stringent controls on how you can play Arena. Because I think that their fear is that, well, if you let people play things other than Standard, they're not going to play as much Standard. But I'm in the camp that if people don't want to play Standard and they can't play another format, they're going to play another game. They're not restricting Brawl and Historic and things like that and not bringing Pioneer to Arena isn't going to make more people play Standard. It's going to make more people play Hearthstone. It's going to make more people play Legends of Runeterra or whatever it's called, or like non-card games, or World of Warcraft or something like that. So I not super keen on any of the announcements that came out today. Like, this is actually pretty cool. Like, Pioneer could be cool. I'd be excited to play it if I weren't largely out of interest for Paper Magic at this point and trying to keep up with it and the amount of money it costs and all that to keep current. But I mean, on its face, this is pretty cool. Like, I'll be really interested to see how Pioneer goes, if it gets as popular as Modern, and it could be kind of like a Modern that's a little bit less broken, because when the more cards there are, the more a format tends to devolve into uninteractive stuff. One thing that I should look at here. This does not include... So this is basically just like standard legal cards from Return to Ravnica forward. So this does not include things like Modern Horizons or the Masters sets and stuff like that. So that's an important thing to note. It would be unusual if it did, but I just wanted to check that just to be sure. And I mean, Return to Ravnica seems like a pretty good spot there, because you get rid of a lot of... I mean, you get, like, there's going to be no Tron, because there's no Tron lands. Like, you could do Tron with, like, Ironcrag Feat, I guess, to get you 7 mana, but the Tron lands are out of the format. You don't have Blood Moon and things like that, some people love, but a lot of people just, and that create non-games. No Chalice of the Void, all that stuff. So it could be kind of interesting as, like, a fairer version of Modern. So I wish that I could be really excited about this, but it also just leaves a bad taste in my mouth, to be completely honest. And maybe Wizards will step it up, and we'll see things get better in terms of, how they're handling this stuff on Arena. But for right now, that's my take. And yeah, this, some good signaling, some good messaging. but I am not looking forward to the next month of Standard. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope that I'm wrong, and I hope that Control can come up to balance out the meta when Field leaves. But I think that it could have been done better. So, anyway, this has been Ben with the Tiger's Den. Thank you very much for joining. Let us know what you think in the comments. This is a lot of information they dumped on us right here, and I'd love to see what you guys have to say about it, what you think about it. So, we're just going to leave it at that. We'll leave it to you. Let us know what you think. Give it a like, subscribe if you liked it. Thumbs down. Let us know what you could improve if you didn't like it. And catch us next time with more video game and Magic the Gathering content. This has been Ben with the Tiger's Den, signing off. We'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.